Hello again. Today I wanted to talk about the use of iMovie as an alternative to those who can't afford Final Cut Pro or any of the other more expensive video editing software. So a couple of things I want to just touch base on. First is, I'll just open one of these up here. So I've got this project already set up, and I wanted to demonstrate first of all the ability of putting a clip with transparency on top so that you can see both of them. That depends basically on which codec that you actually end up with. So firstly, with iMovie, there's only 2 video tracks, as you can see. You can't stack any more on top, and that's a bit of a limitation, but I have a workaround on that. And when you export out of here, you go up to export here, you'll see that there's a few choices to go with. You got the resolution and quality. You can go to the best, which is ProRes, but this particular ProRes I've discovered is only 422, so that means that there will be no transparent background exported with it. So the ability to actually stack these on top, as you see here, I've got the ProRes 422 on top of this one, and the only reason you're seeing that second clip is because I've lowered the opacity down. If I raise the opacity up, you won't be able to see it because there's no alpha involved, so it's covering up the whole video. And if we go to H.264, same thing, no alpha. But as we start working with ProRes 4444, that has an alpha, and now you can see, and just let me demonstrate this one here so it's clear. I've got up here, I'm working in iMovie now, so if I take and click on this icon here, which opens up you more options. If I raise the opacity up, you see that this top one is now concealing the bottom one, and as I lower it down, there's the bottom one there. So and the same with this one. If I lower that opacity, you're seeing only one of the clips, and as I raise the opacity, this is the one that you're seeing. So the workaround I have is, and when you want to work in cases where you've got two different clips and you want to join them up as a compound clip, the only way to do it is to use this top clip with the ProRes 4444. The last 4 means that it's got the alpha. Or if you've exported a video and re-encoded it as HEVC with alpha, I'll touch on this in a minute, the bottom also can be seen. So what I've done here is I'll just show you. And one last thing I thought I would just point out, I noticed in these clips in this media section, there's no name for them, and there's a workaround there. Is if you just go up to view and you tick on the skimmer info, which I've done there. Now, as you can see, as I move the skimmer, the ProRes 422, so that's that one. This is H.264. This just helps, and there's ProRes, and there's the H. So this just helps you identify which clip you're working with. I don't know why they don't allow the naming of the clip to show up, and maybe there is a way. I'm fairly new at iMovie, so it's there's probably something there, but I've sort of been hunting around for a way of making these clips also show the name of them so that you know which one you're working with. Certainly view the skimmer info on is a way around that. So anyway, with this clip here, I'm just going to close off. I'm going to go up here, and just so you know, to navigate around, if you need to look at your projects again, there they are. And so we're there, and if you want more space, you just tick off the media. So now we just have screen in the timeline. So here is the clip I made up in Apple Motion. It's quite complex. I'm not going to go too much into it, other than the fact that we've got some layers all set up. I started off with a sine wave, and which is just this one little segment, and then I've duplicated and joined and all that to make up 3 sine waves here, colored them red. So we've got all this set up already in layers. And I've got some oscillate behaviors on this as well. And then I've got this with neon as well, which is another behavior. A couple of spheres and some spikes coming out. So we end up with this nifty little waveform. And as you see over here in the inspector, I've got some animations going on. And I'm just going to click down through each one so you can sort of see generally how it's set up. I do have some videos on making these shapes up as well, so if you want to check those out, it's good. So once you're happy with this animation, you're ready to export. If you want to maintain the transparency, it's always best to export as a ProRes 4444. That includes the alpha transparency layer, so that when you use that in your movie editing, it will be the transparent part we're going to export there. The transparency allows the rest of it to so you can see the bottom clip. So we got 444 there, and this is probably the best way to achieve the transparency. And also you want to just double check your color space, usually Rec 709, and then make sure your color plus alpha is ticked there, so the rest is there. But you will notice that there's a big file. It's half a gig, so it's quite a bit, but this can be re-encoded later on as you need it. So we'll just name this file. We'll hit save. The export will start happening down there at the bottom. This little scroll wheel here is going to take over. So here we go, and we've got the stacked the ProRes 44 on top, and it reveals the bottom layer. So now you can put this in your iMovie, and as you see here, and then when you export, it'll all be there. So this is just a quick rundown. Once you've exported your 4444, then you do have the option of, there's your clip there. If you right click on the file, if you check down here, you can see one thing you want to be aware of is this get info. I'm going to be covering that in a minute, but the get info and the renaming is really good for knowing exactly what you're working with. But this down here at the bottom encodes select video files. When we do that, then we can come up with this window here, and then you can choose. Here I've recompressed it, or compressed it down to high efficiency video at 1080p, but I've ticked the preserve transparency. So this one will be a much smaller file to work with, but also you still have your transparency in there. This is a way of sort of working around this, but the main thing is whenever you're working with this top file, you want to make sure that the top one does have a transparent layer, the alpha channel. So we're creating files, and then as we create them, it's a good idea to name them. So every so often you'll get this invalid configuration. So when you try to do HEVC with alpha, if you're working with this here, it says ProRes 422. Now this doesn't have an alpha, so it's not going to work with that. That's why you need to encode HEVC from your ProRes 4444. So you have to start with something that has a transparency, and then you can compress it down to a smaller file in the HEVC with alpha. Now, if you go back to that get info, so you right click on the video clip and then you select get info, you end up with this drop downs with all the information you will need to identify what you're working with. This ProRes 4444 was exported from the aMotn, and I should say that iMovie is great for just throwing clips together, but when you want to start getting a bit more complex, like these items here, then probably have to look at getting aMotn if you're wanting to do these sort of graphics. So we've exported from aMotn as a ProRes 4444, color plus alpha. When we work our magic in iMovie, we have to get all that sorted out before we export, because unfortunately, iMovie does not export in 4444 with the alpha, so the best you can do is ProRes 422 with no alpha. So it doesn't matter what you export from iMovie, you can go to the H.264 or even more compressed than that if you like. So the H.264 1080p, preserve transparency, you notice is grayed out, so that means that the video we're trying to re-encode doesn't have an alpha channel. The only time, as I said, with the 4444, it will come up and you can tick that preserve transparency to make sure that whatever's on that clip, the transparent background shows through to the bottom clip. Bear with me on this, it is quite complicated, but by knowing this information it can answer a lot of questions about why there's some problems maybe with your project. So as you see, I'm encoding a ProRes 4444 that has the alpha transparency. This is just what the window is going to look like on your computer. I'll go through this again in a sec, so I'll take you right through the process. So this is what I was getting at before. You right click on the get info for your codecs and your file sizes. So I'm hoping that it's visible, but if you look down, all the information you need to know about that video clip is here, and the most important is the dimensions of it, 1920 by 1080, and there's your Apple ProRes 444. And if you look down here, you have the same thing, but it's Apple ProRes 422. So the main thing to note why you want to know these things, if you've got these clips, if your purpose is to put them into your movie editing and you need that transparency, then you need to look out for that, the 444, or over here I've got the HEVC. Notice the difference in the size of the file, and there it is there. So this one is saying 1920 by 1080 HEVC with alpha, so this is okay to use as the top clip because you've got your transparency. And there's another one there with ProRes 4444. It's a larger file, so this is why it's sometimes good to take these 4444 and compress them down to the HEVC. If you need a smaller file, you'll still get the transparency, but you won't have the big half a gig here almost to work with. If your computer's up to scratch, then it doesn't hurt to throw that in instead. As you saw down the timeline, it all played okay, but if your computer's struggling a little bit, then re-encode Alpha ProRes down to the HEVC. Right clicking on these video files, and that get info is quite good to know about that. So I'm going to just go into this other project. This is a little section on the codecs themselves. What I've got here, just a breakdown of how these numbers all, when you see them, how they all work. So when you're, especially if you're working with a digital camera, and you have here you've got your color sampling at the top, and you'll see these different ones. Most likely you'll only, like in a typical digital camera with a movie function, you might get this, and this is 8-bit color, and there's your 422, that's usually 10-bit color, and then there's your 4444. And generally I haven't seen, unless it's a really top-end camera, I don't see any cameras that actually film with a transparency, but in most cases, you videotaping the outside world, you generally won't need the extra 4 on there because there's no transparency. But there would be cameras out there that could probably do that. You need to film in the best possible definition you can. So that's another story, though. Here we got what they call formats or containers. Generally, you see that as a .mp4, or in Apple, you'll see .mov, and this is a Windows PC. There, these containers hold the same information, all the color sampling, the codec, everything that was picked up by the camera, but it just, the containers are destined for different end users, PC, Mac, TV, DVD, smart device, that sort of thing. That's what the format's all about. And your codecs are here, H.264, 8.265, which is HEVC. There's a couple of open source units. You got audio codecs here too. You mainly want to look at whether they're uncompressed and lossless or compressed and lost. That I'm not going to go into, but just know that these are audio codecs. When I'm working with Logic Pro X, as I'm making this video, I'm using Logic Pro X to do the audio, and that will be bounced down to a wave or AAC. And then just your metadata here, which is also over in the container, is in your bitrate, resolution, subtitles, all that. Just wanted to break it down just a bit here. So this is just a rundown on the color space, a little bit more in depth. Here's your 4444. That means in a group of 4 pixels in 2 rows. This is the number of pixels that are actually being used to put all the colors in. So as I said over here with the 444, you see that every pixel is sampling the color that comes in, and as you go down to different ones, now you've just got 2 of the 4 pixels from each row, and this is quite complex, and it's just something to be aware of. This is generally how the color sampling works. You see, you get 420. You're averaging, these 3 pixels are getting averaged into there, and these 3 are getting averaged into that one. This is 4 pixel sample, and row 1, these are getting averaged into this way. So there's different ways that the color can be sampled. And a quick rundown on the color spaces. Some work in RGB, some work in YUV, some are in CMYK. So just be aware those are different color spaces that you would possibly be working with. Just to give you an idea anyway that how these things are set up. This is getting info about the containers and the formats. This is actually an audio. You'll learn what these are. So this is the audio. This came out of Logic Pro X, and it's M4A, which is similar to the WAV file. So there's your information there. You've got an image here, which is a JPEG. Every file that you make will have some sort of container or format, and those formats allow certain information in there. And you've got an MOV file, which is QuickTime. We've got an animation that was done as a QuickTime as well. That was exported from animation file. I think I was using After Effects at that time. And this is another audio, MP4. And this is a WAV file. Like I said, just a rundown on how these formats and containers work. It's just nice to have a bit of back information. When you're working with a project, it's good to have all the stuff in mind. So as part of your planning process, and mainly the question is, what is the end result? Where is the destination of your final work? This is just a quick rundown on the file. Encode selected video, and you're going up here, and here you can choose which one you're going to do. You may want to compress. This is H.264-2160. This was right out of my camera. It's filmed at Ultra HD. There is some audio on there too. Because there's no alpha, this preserved transparency is going to be grayed out always for those. So this you can just choose to go down to 480p and compress it, or you can compress it with HEVC at 2160. So you don't generally upsample to ProRes, but some cases you might. But generally you take your source file and then you compress it to as you need it. So this is valid information for when you want to set your project up. Finally, I just took this off of the Apple compression. That's an app you can buy to have a bit more variation on the compression that you can work with. If you're working with higher end video and stuff like that, it might be necessary. I find that the desktop's encoding is fine, and the encoding that is within Apple Motion is certainly good. You're able to get those transparent backgrounds on the animations you're making. And iMovie itself, well, yes, you can take it to ProRes 422 as a maximum. So some cases, if you're working with video files that you've taken from a higher end camera, then these things are all there. There's your ProRes, uncompressed, that sort of thing. I only put this on there just to show there is a larger range of settings you convert to if you need to. This overlay here is this one. So there's your 444. This has been exported out of iMovie as a PR422, and this has been converted down to HEVC with alpha. So this gives you an element of building up, like recording audio track by track. There was one thing that was a bit of a problem for me is generally if you selected all these clips, there's no means of just joining these within the timeline. So my workaround is basically you go up here to export and you export it out as a compounded clip. So you're going to end up with this. I guess the main reason I just wanted to point out that when you want to do these clips with overlays, then there is a workaround, and it's not really apparent when you're working with iMovie. A bit of a backstory: I was just finished up my Final Cut Pro trial, and I'm still deciding on spending the $500 on the app. I thought, well, I'll give iMovie a chance, and to be honest, it's not a bad app. It's included with any Mac, and it does the job what you need, but you do need these workarounds, mainly working with animations. I like working with animation in aMotion, and I loved working with Adobe products. After Effects, that's probably the best you can get. It's what they use in the movie industry, really. It's professional, but at $76 a month for the subscription to get Premiere Pro, Photoshop, After Effects, all that. You really have to be working in the industry really to justify that. They were looking after me for quite a while, and I was paying about $50 a month, and that was suitable, but they kept jacking the price up on me. So I went to aMotion, and I tried the Final Cut Pro. I really like Final Cut Pro, but I just got to come up with $500. So I'm sure it will come around to it eventually. So, but I really did want to just investigate iMovie and just to get a feel if I can make this work. I'm making a tutorial, so it's suitable for that. But if you're really talking about dealing with higher resolution film clips, then it still will work for that as well. So good on the titles, backgrounds, transitions, pretty good choice of transitions. So you see that as you scrub across, it'll demonstrate for you. So anyway, this isn't really a huge tutorial on iMovie, but I'm assuming that you've already sort of gone through the process of learning how to import. Quite a bit to learn about iMovie as far as manipulating the clips, but there's some good video tutorials already out there, so I won't go into too much. The main thing with this this little video was to show some workarounds when you're dealing with animations from, say, aMotion or After Effects, or one of those that have transparencies, and you want to get this overlay here. There is a video on how I make those shapes up using just ordinary circles, duplicating, making it into a 3D space, and creating these globes. So this is all created in aMotion, and this was all created in aMotion. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that this was helpful, giving you a feel for iMovie, and there are a bit more items and workarounds that you can do to get a bit more complex. I hope it was helpful for you. The whole idea of these video files and animation files, there's a lot to learn about encoding and formats and that sort of thing. Hopefully this way is a good way to get you started. And I'll leave you with that anyway, so take care, and thanks for watching and listening. See you in the next one.